The human whose name is written in this note shall die. No way that can be real. This is a dream, right?
Oh, yes. A dream. I like that. Dreams are places you can have fun, right? It's all in your mind, so why not enjoy it? Shh. Listen. Go check it out. Now we could, in this dream of yours, take care of a situation like this. We just put Kenny's name down and see what happens.
Well, makes sense to me. So a couple weeks ago, I was given the opportunity to watch Death Note early, down on Netflix in LA. I had a great experience, had some fun, got to hang out with some friends, and especially with Jason, who did a fantastic job with performance capture for Ryuk. Death Note was directed by Adam Wingard, and he stood up in front of us and was just like, "Hi, I have nothing more to say, just let the movie speak for itself." Those were his words. And so the movie did. So I'll get into what I enjoyed about it, and I'll also get into what was a bit lacking and what was negative about it in my eyes. This is my opinion of the movie. So now let's get into this movie. This ain't your daddy's Death Note. This ain't your Death Note. This ain't my Death Note. No, this is a Death Note that is different. And I love that about this movie. As a fan of the original source material, right, I know the ins and outs of the story, I know every character's motivation, so for them to change some of that, and a lot of it too, it made for such a fun experience because I had no idea what was going to happen next. I knew where the story would lead, but I didn't know when it would turn, I didn't know when certain events would take place, I didn't know when certain characters would be introduced. It kept it new for me. I had fun just taking it all in and seeing, okay, so that's how they're changing it. Like, there were a lot of times in the screening room where I was sitting there and just like, okay, all right. Like, it was funny. It was like I was just analyzing this movie, but I was having a fun time. Like, that was me having fun, me doing that. And then there were moments where I'd be like, wait, what? No way. Because they would change things. A big change that caught me a bit off guard, but not in a negative way. It was just different, was Ryuk. What I mean by that is not just the way the character acted, but even the mythology behind a death god or Shinigami. Well, in this movie, it takes place in Seattle, yada yada yada. They don't use the term Shinigami, but you can tell that throughout hundreds of years or whatnot, however long Ryuk's been around, there are documents written down about a death god that seem to be Japanese in the way it's presented in different imagery, some paintings and whatnot. So in this Death Note, the mythology is changed to where I'm assuming Ryuk is the only death god that exists, and the Death Note, instead of being some mystical tool used by Shinigami everywhere, and one just happened to have dropped through the earth, instead of that, this story introduces a concept of a Death Note keeper. So Ryuk, being the only death god, would go around the world searching for a keeper to use the Death Note for a certain amount of time. It wasn't really established how long they would last. The concept of lifespan wasn't really introduced, I guess, until they off themselves, or Ryuk just is just like, all right, you're done, and kills them. So he passes it around. The keeper uses the Death Note for whatever amount of time, then he takes it and looks for another keeper. Simple as that. It's just a power that's passed along. This isn't so much of Ryuk easing his boredom. It's more of like, this is, as a death god, this is how he works in the world. It seems like this time around, when the Death Note is used, it isn't necessarily the power of the Death Note. It's more Ryuk using what is written down in this and going out and proactively causing those deaths to happen. So those are the differences in the Shinigami mythology. With Ryuk's character, the changes there are that he is still playful. He's also a very manipulating character in how he talks to Light. He really initiates things and pushes Light to use the Death Note. Let's talk about more of the positives. I feel like we are able to see Light as more a relatable character than, you know, a boy genius in a high school. This time around, you see that he's intelligent because one of the things that he does is he completes homework for other students and sells the finished homework. We see that he definitely has his own ideals and his own worldview, but he's not openly a genius. Like, it's not like the nation recognizes him as a genius. It's not like he's a popular kid in school who's known for being a genius. He's just a kid, a student at a high school who sees what's wrong with the world and what's messed up with people. And so that makes him a bit more relatable, and he's more hesitant in wanting to use the Death Note. So it's sort of like looking at the small scenes in the original of Light Yagami, thinking through using the Death Note and thinking, does it mean me a murder? I think I just killed someone. Sort of like that extended, and using that as part of his character and as part of his drive, you know, and also part of why he would be hesitant to use the Death Note later on. I feel like making him more grounded in that way helps, especially with a general audience, but at the same time, he immediately has the idea to use the Death Note for good, which is what brings in the question of morality, right? Just like in the original, like, is it evil to use the Death Note to get rid of criminals and whatnot? And here's another change with Light. His relationship with his father is very different in this movie. A change in having the culture be a Western culture here in America, in contrast to a Japanese culture. His father isn't as stoic of a person. He and Light get into arguments and whatnot. Like there's more of a struggle there that's more fitting to how a child here in the US would respond to a parent. A lot more of questioning their authority and whatnot, and what they believe. It's not the same Death Note, it's a new Death Note. And so that's what I appreciate about it. Then there is the character Mia Sutton, who is this movie's equivalent to Misa, but definitely not in the same way. In the original, Misa was someone who immediately fell in love with Light because she immediately knew he was Kira. She was in love with Kira and the idea of Kira, and so was obsessed with Light. This is different. This time it's sort of a balance, but there is romance there that is not one-sided this time. This time they both really do love each other. And this story, Mia pushes Light to use the Death Note even more, and sometimes might be stepping too far out, and Light has to kind of pull her back in, which causes some tension there because she wants to go all out and use the Death Note. Out of all the characters, I feel like Ella has had most of the backlash when it comes to the casting, what was seen in the trailers. And I will say that ironically, he is very accurate to L. The difference here is he is far more active than L. What I mean by that is he's not behind the scenes. He is more of a detective on the scene, investigating there, looking at the clues and stuff like that. He does hide his identity. What I enjoy about this is that this doesn't shy away from his origins either. It's a bit different. It still involves something similar to the Whammy House, right? Children raised to become the world's greatest detective and whatnot. But here it seems like there's something more sinister. So it's teased a bit, but we don't get to really see much. And so Elle and Wataji have the same relationship in here. This is what's funny. Ironically, Elle, the one who seemed like you'd be the least accurate, ends up being the most accurate of the lead cast. I really enjoyed Elle's role in this movie. It was very much the same, a foil for Light, but we also get to see the weaknesses of Elle's character, which in the original, we can only speculate on and is not openly explored, but in here we see he struggles himself. So now we can go into the negatives, the things that I personally didn't enjoy as much. This is more of my preference and going off of my preference, and first thing that comes to mind is the scene where Light and Elle first meet. there isn't enough time spent with both of them together. And I feel like that's something that the original had over this. But looking at this as a brand new story, I still feel like there were opportunities to have Elle and Light interact far more often than they did. And because it lacked this, when they first meet, there was so much emotion. It's a wonderful scene. Unfortunately, I didn't feel as invested as I could have been if they had met prior. And I was really looking forward to it. And while watching the scene, I was just like, this is amazing. I love this, I love this, I love this, I love this. But I feel like I was still missing more emotion from my part as a viewer. I wasn't as immersed because I'm sitting there thinking they're immediately blowing up before even knowing each other, and I don't understand that. Another negative I'd say would probably be the lack of Ryuk, and I understand all the reasonings behind not having Ryuk in it as much. I still feel like having him attached to Light would have been more fun for me because I love Ryuk's interactions with Light. There wasn't really that much of a reason for Ryuk to be obsessed with apples. He just was. So that's why I wish that there was more of that, like Ryuk just eats an apple and he's like, that's juicy. It didn't take away from the story. It just was something that I wanted more of, because if it was there, it might have made some scenes more fun, but it might have also detracted from the tone that we're going for. So overall, I'd say I enjoyed the movie. I had a fun time. As a fan of Death Note, I really had fun not knowing what was going to happen, and it made the movie entertaining. And so those are my thoughts on Netflix's Death Note. You have your own thoughts, so let me know what they are down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and if you don't, that's okay.